I went to the doctor's office expecting a routine checkup, but what happened next left me questioning everything I thought I knew about loyalty and desire. When her hand lingered on my arm and her eyes locked onto mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in years alive. But as the line between patient and doctor blurred, I didn't realize I was stepping into a trap that would destroy everything I held dear. My name is Ethan, and for the past 5 years my life has been steady, predictable, even. I had a stable job, a loving fiancée named Emily, and a future that felt safe. Emily and I had been together since college, and she was everything I thought I wanted: kind, supportive, and endlessly patient. But somewhere along the way, our relationship started to feel routine. The late-night talks, the spontaneous weekend getaways, the fiery passion, they all faded into schedules, bills, and Netflix marathons. I didn't realize how much I missed feeling desired, feeling seen, until I met Lauren. It all started with a simple health checkup. Emily had nagged me for months to get looked at after I complained about fatigue. I finally gave in and scheduled an appointment with a new doctor, Dr. Lauren Hayes. I wasn't expecting much. I figured it'd be in and out, just another box to check off my list. But the moment Lauren walked into the room, something shifted. She was different, confident but warm, professional yet disarming. Her smile lingered just a second too long, and the way her eyes held mine made my pulse quicken. At first, I brushed it off as nothing. She was doing her job, after all. But then she started asking questions, not just about my physical health but about me. My life. My stress. My relationship. Her voice was soft, almost intimate, and before I knew it, I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't even opened up to Emily. When the appointment ended, I felt strangely disappointed, like I wasn't ready for it to be over. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just my ego playing tricks on me. But then a week later, I got a text from her. Just checking in to see how you're doing. It seemed innocent at first, but the more we talked, the more the conversations veered into something deeper, something dangerous. And the worst part, I didn't want to stop. The text messages started off harmless, quick check-ins about my health, reminders to follow up on test results. But soon they shifted. Lauren's words became more personal, asking about my stress levels and whether Emily was helping me manage them. You can always talk to me if you need someone to listen, she wrote one evening. The words seemed innocent enough, but they lingered in my mind longer than they should have. I told myself it was just her being a caring doctor, but deep down I knew better. I felt it in the way my pulse quickened every time her name popped up on my phone. Then came the excuses. I found reasons to book another appointment, convincing myself it was about my health. But the truth? I just wanted to see her again. When I walked into her office for the second time, the air felt heavier, charged. She smiled, but it wasn't just friendly. It was knowing. "How have you been feeling?" she asked, her voice softer than before. "Nervous," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. She tilted her head. "Why nervous?" I hesitated, my throat dry. "I don't know," I lied. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine. "You can be honest with me, Ethan. I want you to feel comfortable here." But comfort was the last thing I felt. My heart pounded as her hand brushed against my arm. Just a fleeting touch, but it sent a jolt through me. I told myself it was nothing, but then she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes it's okay to want more." I froze. I should have pulled away, should have ended it right there. But instead, I let her words hang in the air, tempting me in ways I couldn't explain. Later that night, I lay in bed next to Emily, replaying every word, every touch. I felt sick with guilt, but I couldn't stop thinking about Lauren. Emily noticed something was off. "You've been quiet lately," she said, resting her head on my chest. "I'm just tired," I lied, my stomach twisting. But Emily wasn't convinced. Over the next few days, she started asking more questions. Where I'd been, why I was suddenly getting more checkups, and why I seemed distracted. The walls were closing in, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything fell apart. Then Lauren texted me again. "I can't stop thinking about you." The words made my breath catch. It wasn't professional. It wasn't subtle. It was dangerous. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every logical part of me screamed to delete it, to block her number and walk away. But I didn't. Instead, I replied, "Me too." The second I hit send, I knew I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. And as much as I hated myself for it, part of me felt alive, more alive than I had in years. The next time I saw Lauren, everything felt different, heavier, more intense. I told Emily I was heading to another checkup, and she didn't question it. She trusted me. That trust made the guilt unbearable, but it didn't stop me from walking into Lauren's office, my pulse pounding. Lauren was waiting. She closed the door behind me, locking it this time. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, her voice soft but charged with something unspoken. Neither was I. I sat down, but she didn't. She stood close, too close, and I felt the heat radiating from her body. "How have you been feeling?" she asked, her voice low, almost teasing. "Restless," I admitted, my words catching in my throat. She smiled, stepping closer. "I've been thinking about you." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. "This is wrong," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I didn't move. "Then leave," she challenged, but her hand found mine, her fingers trailing lightly along my skin. I couldn't. Instead, I leaned in, and when her lips brushed mine, the world fell away. The kiss started soft, hesitant, but quickly grew hungrier, more desperate. Her hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I felt the weight of months of tension finally snapping. I should have stopped it there. I should have pulled away, apologized, and walked out. But I didn't. I let her lead me, her touch igniting something in me I hadn't felt in years. The rush of adrenaline, the thrill of breaking rules, it drowned out everything else. When her lips moved down my neck, my breath hitched, and I knew there was no turning back. "Tell me you want this," she whispered. "I do," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. And that was it. I don't know how long we stayed in that room, lost in each other. All I know is that when it was over, the weight of what I'd done hit me like a freight train. Lauren looked at me with a mix of satisfaction and something deeper, something possessive. "You don't regret this," she said, almost daring me to disagree. But I couldn't answer. I dressed quickly, avoiding her eyes as I headed for the door. "Ethan," she called after me, but I didn't turn around. The drive home felt endless. My phone buzzed twice, but I didn't check it. I knew it was her. When I walked through the door, Emily was sitting on the couch, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Hey," she said, standing to hug me. "How was the appointment?" Her arms wrapped around me, and I froze. How could she still trust me? Still love me? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to smile. "It went fine." But as I held her, the smell of Lauren's perfume lingered faintly on my shirt, and my stomach churned. I told myself it was over, that it had been a mistake, a moment of weakness I'd never repeat. But the truth? I couldn't stop thinking about Lauren. The way she made me feel. The way she looked at me like I was the only man in the world. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. The guilt was unbearable, but the thrill was addictive. I told myself over and over that it was a mistake, that it wouldn't happen again, but it did. Lauren and I started meeting in secret. Sometimes at her office, sometimes in her car after work. Each time felt riskier, more dangerous, but I couldn't stop myself. I became someone I didn't recognize, sneaking around, deleting messages, and lying to Emily's face while she kissed me goodbye every morning, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind her back. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. It all came crashing down one Friday night. Emily and I were supposed to have dinner with friends, but I told her I needed to work late. In reality, I was meeting Lauren at a hotel across town. The moment I stepped into the room, Lauren was already there, waiting for me with that same knowing smile that both excited and terrified me. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, pulling me closer. I didn't answer. I just kissed her, letting the guilt melt away as her body pressed against mine. But then it happened. A knock at the door. We froze, our eyes locking as panic set in. "Who is it?" Lauren called out, her voice trembling. No answer. I moved toward the peephole, my heart pounding, but before I could check, the door burst open. And there she was, Emily. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and filled with shock and betrayal. "Emily," I started, but she held up her hand, silencing me. The room felt like it was spinning. Lauren stepped back, her face flushed and panicked, but Emily didn't even look at her. Her eyes were locked on me. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. I tried to step closer, but she backed away. "Don't," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Don't come near me." I felt my chest tighten. "It's not what it looks like." She laughed bitterly, cutting me off. "Not what it looks like. You're in a hotel room with her, Ethan. What else am I supposed to think?" I had no answer. Lauren tried to speak, but Emily turned on her, her voice sharp and full of rage. "Stay out of this," she snapped. Lauren's face crumbled, and she stepped back, retreating toward the corner of the room as if she could disappear. Emily turned back to me, her voice shaking. "I trusted you," she said. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" Her words cut deeper than I thought possible. But before I could say anything, she walked out, slamming the door behind her. For a moment, neither Lauren nor I moved. The room felt suffocating. "I'm so sorry," Lauren said softly, but I couldn't even look at her. Instead, I grabbed my things and ran after Emily, but by the time I got to the parking lot, she was gone. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. When I finally got home later that night, her suitcase was gone. I sat in the living room, staring at the front door, waiting for her to come back. But she didn't. The next few days were a blur of unanswered calls and sleepless nights. I kept replaying that moment in my head, Emily's face when she saw us, and it broke me every time. Lauren tried reaching out, but I ignored her. Whatever we'd had, it wasn't worth this. It never had been. But it was too late to fix it. When Emily finally agreed to meet with me a week later, she looked like a different person, hardened, guarded. "I just need to know why," she said. And the worst part, I didn't have an answer. Because it wasn't just about Lauren. It was about me, about my insecurities, my selfishness, my need to feel wanted. "I messed up," I admitted. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know how sorry I am." Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. "I loved you," she said, her voice breaking. "And I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again because of this." She left before I could respond, and as I watched her walk away, I felt the full weight of what I had done. I'd lost her, and no apology would ever be enough to bring her back. The days after Emily left were the hardest of my life. The house felt empty without her. The sound of her laughter, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. Everywhere I turned, I was reminded of what I'd destroyed. I tried to keep myself busy, burying my guilt under piles of work, but it didn't help. Nothing did. Emily didn't block my number, but she didn't answer my calls either. The only time I heard from her was through a short text. "I need space." It killed me, but I respected her wishes. Meanwhile, Lauren kept reaching out. She left voicemails and sent messages, begging me to talk, to explain what had happened. But I didn't respond. What we'd done wasn't passion. It was poison. One night, I finally broke down and answered one of her calls. "Ethan, I miss you," she said softly. I clenched my jaw, the sound of her voice igniting a mix of anger and regret. "It's over, Lauren," I said firmly. She hesitated. "You don't mean that." "I do," I snapped. "This ruined my life, and I won't let it ruin me any more than it already has." I hung up, blocking her number before I could second-guess myself. But cutting her out didn't fix what was broken. The damage had already been done. Weeks passed, and the loneliness settled in like a fog. I didn't sleep much, and when I did, I dreamed of Emily, of the way she used to look at me before everything fell apart. Therapy became my only outlet. At first, I went just to process the guilt, but the deeper I dug, the more I started to understand why it had happened. It wasn't just about Lauren. It was about years of neglect, of letting the fire in my marriage die out without trying to rekindle it. And it was about me, about my insecurities, my fear of getting older, of not being enough. I had sought validation in Lauren, but what I really needed was to fix what was broken inside me. I wrote Emily a letter, pouring out everything I hadn't been able to say in person. I told her about the therapy, about how much I regretted what I had done, and about how much I still loved her. I didn't expect her to respond, but she did. A month later, we met at a coffee shop. She looked different, stronger, more sure of herself, but there was pain in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I read your letter," she said, stirring her coffee slowly. I nodded, unsure of what to say. "I'm glad you're getting help," she continued. "But that doesn't mean I can forget what you did." Her words stung, but I knew she was right. "I don't expect you to," I said. I needed you to know that I'm trying, that I'll spend the rest of my life trying, even if it's too late for us." She looked at me then, and for the first time in weeks, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I'd betrayed. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said softly, "but I think I want to try." Hope surged through me, but I didn't let myself get carried away. "I'll do whatever it takes," I promised. And I meant it. But the truth is, rebuilding trust isn't easy. Even after Emily agreed to try, things weren't the same. She flinched when my phone buzzed. She questioned my late nights at work. And sometimes, I'd catch her looking at me like she was trying to figure out if she still knew who I was. I couldn't blame her. I'd taken something fragile and beautiful and shattered it. And even though I was doing everything I could to piece it back together, the cracks were still there, visible and raw. The fallout wasn't just about losing Emily's trust. It was about losing the version of myself that I thought I was. The man who would never cheat, never lie, never hurt the woman he loved. I had to learn to live with that. And I had to hope that someday, Emily could learn to live with it too. Rebuilding trust felt like learning to walk again, slow, painful, and full of missteps. Emily agreed to give us another chance, but it wasn't simple. Every conversation felt measured, every touch hesitant. It was like we were tiptoeing around the wreckage, afraid that one wrong move would send everything crashing down again. We started couples therapy, and for the first time, we were forced to face the truths we had both been avoiding. I admitted my insecurities, the fear of growing older, of fading into the background, of not being enough. I admitted how those feelings had pushed me to seek validation in Lauren, how I'd confused lust for connection and excitement for love. Emily admitted her own fears, how she'd felt me pulling away long before Lauren, but didn't know how to reach me. How she'd blamed herself, wondering what she'd done wrong to make me stop looking at her the way I used to. Those sessions were raw, sometimes brutal, but they also forced us to be honest, not just about what had happened, but about why it happened. I realized then that the affair wasn't just about Lauren. It was about me, about the emptiness I'd let fester inside me instead of confronting it. About the cracks in our marriage that we'd both ignored until they split wide open. And as painful as it was, that realization also gave me hope. Because if the affair wasn't just about Lauren, then fixing things wasn't just about forgetting her. It was about us. Over time, Emily started to let her walls down. She didn't trust me completely. Not yet, but she trusted that I was trying. And I was. I started leaving work early just to spend time with her. I planned dates, surprised her with flowers, and reminded her, every single day, that she was enough. I also worked on myself. Therapy helped me confront my fears instead of burying them. I learned how to communicate, how to be vulnerable without running away. Most importantly, I learned how to face the man in the mirror, the man who had broken the woman he loved, and still find a way to move forward. One night, months later, Emily looked at me across the dinner table and said something I'll never forget. "I don't think I'll ever forget what happened," she said, her voice steady. "But I do think I'm ready to forgive." Tears burned my eyes, but this time they weren't from guilt. They were from relief, from the knowledge that, after everything, we still had a chance. But I didn't take it lightly. Because forgiveness isn't a finish line. It's a process. And every day, I wake up knowing I have to earn it. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that love isn't perfect. It's messy and flawed, and sometimes it breaks under the weight of our mistakes. But love is also a choice. And in the end, it's not about avoiding mistakes. It's about choosing to fight for each other when everything falls apart. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm proud of who I've become because of it. And if my story can teach anyone anything, let it be this. Love is worth fighting for, even when it's broken. What would you do if you were in Emily's shoes? Could you forgive betrayal and rebuild trust? Or would you walk away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you'd handle a situation like this. If this story made you think, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales of love, betrayal, and redemption.